Many new as well as experienced interviewers prepare sufficiently for their meetings with applicants, but don't know how to proceed when they're face-to-face. What should they do first? Jump right in with the first question? If so, what should the first question be? Should they let the applicant start by asking a few questions themselves? Or perhaps the interviewer should begin by prompting information about the job and the company. But won't that give too much away? Is there a correct order in which information should be provided and reviewed? These are all excellent questions concerning the components of an interview. Let's identify and explore these components and make some sense out of how to proceed with the face-to-face interview meeting. Every interview requires a structured format. The format is both beneficial to interviewers and applicants. It provides interviewers with a checklist of sorts, ensuring coverage of all the necessary information and ensuring applicants a comprehensive exchange of information. The format of an interview should include the 5 steps seen here. Number 1, making introductory remarks concerning what's to take place during the interview. Number 2, asking questions about an applicant's education, prior work history as it relates to the requirements of the job, as well as about relevant intangible categories. Number 3, providing information about the job opening and its salary and benefits. Number 4, answering questions about the organization. And number 5, informing the applicant as to what happens next before ending the interview on a positive note. The order in which the interview covers these 5 phases is largely a matter of preference, with the exception of the first and the last phases, telling the applicant what's about to take place and what will occur next. Regardless of the format you select, devote a few minutes at the beginning of the interview to putting the applicant at ease. This is accomplished during the rapport building stage with icebreakers, those comments and questions that have no bearing on the job. Their sole purpose is to put the applicant at ease before the actual interview begins. Here are some neutral questions and remarks that you can use to put applicants at ease. Did you have a smooth commute? When we last spoke, you indicated you were going to take the train in. How'd that work for you? That's some blizzard we had last week. How much snow did we get? It's nice to see the sun for a change. It's been so many consecutive days of raining. You get the idea. Interviewers need to balance the amount of talking they do with the amount of listening. Many interviewers talk too much, erroneously believing that the more they're in control of the interview as long as they're talking. In reality, no more than approximately 25% of your time should be devoted to talking as the interviewer. Spend this time asking questions about the applicant's qualifications, asking clarifying points, providing information about the job and organization, and answering job and organizational related questions. The remaining 75% of the interview should be devoted to listening. Listening to what the applicant says in response to the icebreaker questions at the beginning of the interview is very different from actively listening during the rest of the structured interview process. Thought speed is a wonderful tool that enables interviewers to hone their active listening skills. Here's how it works. Researchers have determined that most people think at a rate of approximately 400 words per minute. We speak at a rate of approximately 125 words a minute. This means that we think faster than we speak. While the applicant is talking, you can use thought speed to accomplish a great deal, including the following: preparing your next question, analyzing what the applicant is saying, piecing together what the applicant is saying now in relation to something said earlier in the interview, give you the time to glance down at the applicant or the resume to verify information, observe the applicant's body language, mentally check your own body language to ensure you're conveying interest and understanding, consider the applicant's background as it relates to job requirements, and take notes. Nonverbal communication is vital to the interview process. Often, interviewers can learn as much about applicants through their nonverbal messages as verbal. In fact, experts assert that as much as 55% of communication is nonverbal, followed by 38% that's attributed to tone of voice, and a mere 7% that's verbal. One reason for this is that verbal communication is easier to control than nonverbal. Consider the applicant who answers your question about why she's leaving her current job. Her response sounds plausible. As much as I've enjoyed my job over the past 2 years, there's just no room for growth. Regrettably, I feel that I'm compelled to explore other opportunities. As she speaks, you notice that she's twisting the ring on her right finger and biting her lower lip. You may not know exactly what's going on at this point, but on some level you understand that her verbal and nonverbal messages are not contiguous. Ignoring this inconsistency could result in overlooking significant job-related information and a poor selection decision or rejection decision for a particular position. Have you ever had a colleague who firmly believes they can tell whether an applicant is qualified for a job within minutes of the applicant walking into the room? They draw their conclusions based on such external factors as the person's clothes, grooming, and the colors they wear. All of these factors may or may not be relevant depending on the job, but are they telling to the extent that a person can be excluded from further consideration? The question must be asked then, how accurate are first impressions? Here's what inevitably happens, albeit often on a subconscious level when we meet someone for the first time. We mentally match the shape and features of their face, their hair, their style of dress, and so on with those of someone we know. If we conjure up an image of someone we like, then we're likely to respond favorably, and vice versa. We then move to focusing on specific external factors such as glasses, makeup, tattoos, jewelry, and piercings. Once again, we react positively or otherwise. Then, often in a matter of seconds, we draw a conclusion, qualified or unqualified, suitable or unsuitable. Whether this ends up being valid is not the point. What is significant is that we all react to nonverbal messages to greater or lesser extents. Interviewers size up applicants and vice versa. The last part is often overlooked. We tend to forget that applicants are deciding on whether they want to work for us. Although there are no universal translations, there are certain gestures and movements that were likely to convey a certain impression. Remember, first impressions and nonverbals are critical in understanding how to best interact in the interview process. One of the greatest challenges for an interview is encouraging applicants to talk. Some applicants are well prepared, self-confident, and more than willing to answer your question. Indeed, it's difficult to prevent some of them from talking too much and far too long. With others, however, talking to an interviewer can be intimidating and unnerving. Regardless of how much they want the job, selling themselves might be very difficult. These applicants need a little help. Here are 6 ways to encourage applicants to speak freely. Follow along on this visual. 1. Use repetition. This encourages applicants to continue talking and helps clarify certain points. 2. Summarize. Like repetition, summarization allows the applicant to clarify points. It further ensures an accurate understanding on your part. 3. Ask closed-ended questions. Asking competency-based questions will yield the most information, but applicants have difficulty talking and may initially respond better to a series of direct, close-ended questions. 4. Employ certain phrases to encourage applicants to continue talking. These might include, "I see," or "How interesting." "Is that right? Really?" and "I didn't know that." And 5th and finally, use encouraging body language. For these phases of understanding to be effective, they must be accompanied by what is typically interpreted as encouraging body language.